Gents, thank you so much for coming to chat with us today. It's been a busy old morning, a busy old lunchtime.
It has.
Just introduce yourselves, and more importantly, whereabouts are you also travelling from in the world to be here with us today?
Yeah, so I'm Michael Torrington. I'm the head of educational technology at the International Community School in Jordan. So we're actually traveled both from Amman.
Yeah. My name's John Crew. I'm a teacher in primary and again working for the International Community School.
And how's the conference been for you this morning?
It's been terrific.
We're
It's
now
been really
starting
nice.
with the last workshops that you'd like to make your way.
Well, there you go. It's busy.
Yeah.
It's clearly very busy. It's nice. It's always there's keynote speakers are always very interesting. There's the workshops, which is always fascinating and something to get into. But it's also the colleagues you meet, I think, which really make it and give you those extra bits that you weren't expecting. And especially with AI at the moment, I think it's. People talk about, curiosity and play. It's like as teachers and educators, you've been given the ultimate toy, and everyone's really keen to play with it and with all these different variations of it and see how we can apply it. There's a sense of excitement over it, I think, which is nice and very positive.
It's nice to really see, like John said, to see where people are and how engaged they are with this new idea of AI and just sort of looking at the energy. I feel like very often you get inspired by the people around you as much as you get inspired by the sessions. So having those conversations over lunch or over just standing around at break and hearing people talk about sort of what they're passionate about, it inspires you and you take that passion back with you.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously you guys have delivered your workshops as well. Give us a brief synopsis of the types of things you took the teachers through in that.
I mean, yeah.
Well, it's about application. It's about application because there's lots of different tools out there and lots of different sort of interfaces that you can use. But we thought it'd be interesting to see how we use, to explain how we use AI, but embodied in sort of existing pedagogies. We looked at it through Rosenshine and through Bloom to seeing how, with existing good, solid pedagogies, you can use AI as a tool to help you through that.
I think what was fascinating for us as we do this work with them too is this idea that it serves dual purpose. So here we have children using the ChatGPT type interface, school-safe AI as a chat, but they're learning both about the technology and the best use of prompting and questioning and these kinds of things, as well as they're learning about the subject area content. So you get to hit two at once, basically.
I think there's a sense of optimism around AI as well, which we've got here. And I think a lot of that is improving the sort of that quality of human interactions as well, developing better tools for empathy and questioning, and doing the very human thing. Humans create relationships. Machines can't really do that. So using AI to create skills and knowledge where you can go and share it with other people. I think that's a real thing that's come through at the very human side of it.
Dan said it best out there. Dan said something similar in the morning. He says, what's left for us? Right? If AI can do all these cognitive skills, how do we as educators then sort of grow the human skills? And how does chat or how does artificial intelligence allow us to help our students grow those skills?
Yeah. So we've got a series of questions, scenarios for you today, some of which are based off of Dan's book, talking about leadership, about heretics, things that are obviously from the opposing viewpoint. And so I've got a question for you here, kind of alludes to something you said, and it starts with AI in education. Is it overhyped? So I'm curious from your perspective, everyone is obsessed. Well, not really, actually, we know the bubble, but let's assume obsessed with AI's potential to revolutionize learning. But what's the biggest AI in education idea that's actually complete nonsense?
Oh, which one's complete nonsense? Oh, gosh. It all depends on how we use it and where we want to go with it and what the restrictions are. I mean, there's a great sense of optimism in this is going to finally break the old industrial models of education, this thing that's gone on forever and lumbered on, and it sort of collects things, the education sort of collects things as it goes along without really shedding anything or creating anything new. And I think there's a real sense in teachers that AI is going to change all of this. How? I think it will depend very much on restrictions on about how it's received and what the threats are.
I would sort of follow on with John. If we're thinking most recently, it is this optimism that it will completely reshape education. As an educator and a technology person in education for many, many years, there have been many people said those words. As much as AI is something totally different and it's a paradigm shift, I wonder whether it's enough of a paradigm shift to totally revolutionize what we do in education. I think it's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
But I think also wait a year. Wait a year and see what the
it goes.
conversation would be like then. It's predicting the future at the moment is ridiculous. You can't do it. You have no idea what's out there.
3 months.
Even a month, 3 months away. 3 months away, you've got no idea. You'll be wrong. It'll be ridiculous.
I'm trying to think of the conversations I had this time last year when we were sat here, and there wasn't anything to do necessarily with AI governance. I don't think Udio or any of the music generation apps were out yet. Sora definitely wasn't available to us. You know, all these, the potentials, all these people talking about, yeah, but it will be able to, kind of in the wishful thinking. I look at that question myself and go, the biggest nonsense is it's going to revolutionize learning. For me, from my side, I'm using it in terms of, learning is learning. Will always be there and done in the same way potentially. Education, you're right, in terms of like what we need to think about in terms of from the industrial model. But
I always felt that in teaching as well, the heart of any teaching is the storyteller. Yeah. It's the storytelling, and I think we might actually get more time now to be proper storytellers and to teach children those skills so they can often tell their stories. Now that seems like it's always going to be fiction, but it's not, of course. It's about how you perceive the world and how you see things afresh, and that's extraordinary.
Well, what do they say? There's some research or there's some talk out there about the best teachers are the best performers, right? And if you have stage presence, I think they call it stage presence, then your connection with your students and their skills improve. So we'll see if AI can actually take that stage presence and
if you want to go really out there, right? So let's go really out there. We're reading a lot about this recently. I'm interested in philosophy. Loads of people here have mentioned philosophy, but coming back to these kind of ways of what it is to be human now as well, and really having these productive conversations, very optimistic ones, which I like as well. But they talk about being sentient, being sapient, and all these ideas about how this evolves in the future. But it's a neat idea that humans, for the first time, actually have something that's intelligent to talk to. No matter how it's a simulacrum or something, it's a comparison to it, but you've actually got somebody else to talk to now, which we never really had before. And I think it might redefine our relationships.
I'm thinking about that. Let's give you a scenario to go through. The AI head teacher. School decides to use AI to make all major decisions from curriculum design to student discipline. So, gents, do you think this would create the best run school in history, or do you think it would be complete chaos?
I think that it depends how much or how independent the AI is. If you have people in the loop, I mean, it's the buzzword now, right? But having the human in the loop, I think that AI would be a great advisor. I think that the AI would be a great co-facilitator, co-thought, or thought partner. I don't think it would be a great leader.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that as well. But I mean, we get to redefine everything now. What's a great leader? What does a really good head teacher do? There's an awful lot of this is running a bureaucracy, and if schools are essentially bureaucracies, which they are, which leads to an awful lot of the frustrations that teachers have with them, and a lot of how they construct their goals. I think Ben was talking today about you start with culture, and then you build your strategies, and then you build your goals from that. And so often we do things like we write policy for inspectors, not necessarily for your school. And if we could get rid of that kind of emotional feedback loop and worry that humans do, it may present a very different model of a school, which then you could buy into or not, and you can change the model as you go. But it could build some very, very nice structures for us to work in.
Keeping within schools, we're the focus now kind of on cross-disciplinary or interdisciplinary knowledge. And you mentioned Bloom's earlier, and just happened this morning to be reading an article on Substack where, I don't know if you've come across it, but the research that was done with, I think it was it Microsoft? And they were looking at using Bloom's and how AI is diminishing our cognitive abilities and thinking within a certain area of that, within critical thinking. I'm curious from you guys, in terms of the use of AI, we're going through this, if AI can excel at narrowing deep expertise, but human creativity comes from broad cross-disciplinary knowledge, how do we stop AI from creating over-specialized learners?
I mean,
it's multi-layers there. Yeah, no, I think that when we talk a little bit about de-skilling, right? And this idea of there are things that AI will do, and if we rely on it only to do those things and we de-skill ourselves. I think it's largely about how we use it or how we encourage our students and our leaders and our teachers to use it. If we use it as a thought partner, if we use it as a veteran teacher to consult, it's added value. If we use it to generate our policy and don't touch it, then we're not necessarily, we couldn't be de-skilled pretty quickly.
there's an idea of sentience, though, isn't there? The idea is that you have to have an emotional response before we build things. We're humans, that's what we do. And AI is it's gone away from that. It doesn't have an emotional response to things. But we can still put that back in, I think, as well. That's one of the skills of a teacher, I think, as well, is when we're learning how to navigate these ever-increasing, more sophisticated machines, that we build that in, we build the critical thinking in. And I think that's what we can focus on. That's the human element that we focus on and we build, and we can do that. We can do that immediately in our lesson tomorrow. We can start building those things in. That was part what our workshop was about, is showing how to build in critical thinking and that empathy and that kind of questioning and ultimately ethical behavior.
Give us one tip then of how we do that. From your workshop, what's maybe one or two tips in terms of what you've just said?
This is something that we both talked about. I mean, I think about... I think about this idea of it teaches children to be better askers of questions. Okay. Our students, we find very quickly when we use generative AI even, don't know how to ask good questions. We found this through classroom dialogue all the time. Kids don't know how to engage in conversation. What is a chatbot at the end of the day? It's a conversationalist. So if we can teach our children to use AI in ways that get them good responses, they'll also be the same ways that they can use in their conversation with their peers. It teaches children to ask good questions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's harnessing curiosity. I think that's a big thing as well. You give it to adults. One of the things we did, ask questions, but you have to design your question first. Design your questions on different areas to learn about this new area that you're going to be exploring. And everyone goes blank. And it's quite interesting for a few minutes. We had a slide prepared where you got to these sort of root questions that people, when they get going, it's great. But even with adults, I think there is quite a blank, even with all that experience. It's quite hard to do.
We've been handed the machine or the technology that will answer any question. We first now need to teach our children how to ask the questions.
Yeah, it reminds Ted Lasso. It's just that I always go back to it. It drives in terms of what I do in my teaching at the moment. So my work is my guinea pig year, my year 8s. It's no exam pressure. It's like, and I say to them open, it's like, we're doing about plants as a biologist, but the skill I'm going to develop in you is curiosity. So most of the activities will be about you asking questions and things that you notice and critical thinking, and then you've got to go and find it and piece these things together. And it's a challenging thing to do.
And I think what we found is really nice, especially if you have a neurodiverse class. If you give them a series of open-ended things, just go and ask anything you like. If they ask something which is particularly passionate for them, the example I used was, for example, we were talking about Neolithic times. I've got one little boy that loves trains. So his first question was, did they have trains? And of course, in a classroom, when you've got 30 children there and you're talking to them, you can't really indulge that very much because you've got a limited time. With AI, you can say, yeah, go for it, go and explore. Did they have trains and why didn't they have trains? Yeah. And he came up with this whole range of fantastic ideas. And of course, as you answer those questions, you get down to where we were looking at as well. What materials did they have? Why did they use those materials? Yeah. So huge amounts of knowledge for that child who would have been on a periphery of the class because you wouldn't have that time for them.
I think what you say is key too, because as teachers, we know that inquiry-based learning and project-based learning and this idea of individual pursuit of curiosity is so important. But before the AI technology, we didn't necessarily have all the skills and resources we need to make that happen for everybody. Yeah. Every student now has a junior tutor sitting next to them. They can pursue it based upon what they're curious about, if it's trains or whatever else it is. They have the ability to go down that path and have the skills they need to make it succeed, whatever it is.
Definitely. One last question for you both. In one sentence, what's the biggest reason educators should or shouldn't trust AI?
Just one.
It's like anything new that comes along, you should and you shouldn't trust it. That seems like I need a deeper answer to that question. I'd say both. Of course, you should trust it and you shouldn't trust it at the same time. We talk about critical thinking. That's exactly what critical thinking is. You're saying that's very, very interesting. However, I think there is when we again back to philosophy, but these ideas of what it is to be a human, what it is to learn, what we need to learn, what's important, ethics comes into it. And I think there's a huge thing that we teach ethics, and questioning, I think, is a good way to start teaching ethics.
My one sentence answer is yes. You should and you should not trust it both.
And I think that, because of what you've said there, is to do with AI ethics, our understanding. And I find it interesting that actually if teachers struggle to understand that, don't have the skills to be able to do that, how do we expect our students to be able to? What I also find quite interesting is then, well, hang on a minute, you can use AI to help upskill and acknowledge yourself on what ethics is, or potentially what AI ethics is, or how to even bring that into some of your activities.
There may be a question for reflection here as well, because if we're struggling with things like ethics in teaching and what we should be learning, you've got to ask yourself, what have we been doing all this time? And in a year's time, it might be interesting to look back. We might even, in that 1 year, have enough gap where we can look back and really question, what were we doing all those years? Why were we thinking like that?
I would argue that ethics is going to be increasingly important, right? We right now have a view inside the machine. We sort of have a feel for, and it's like Dan was saying, it's a toddler. When it grows up, we better have some ethics in place, or have ethics education for our teachers and our students.
Well, gents, thank you ever so much for taking the time to speak with me today. And enjoy the rest of the conference, enjoy the rest of Bucharest, and safe travels back.
Thank you very much.